see through walls for miles in all directions. They engaged in hushed conversation, choosing to keep their secrets from all but their queen. Further along were the fighters, the few mutants with destructive powers rivaling Monica's own. There were maybe 9 of them, and while they were decent enough people, most of the others were at least a little afraid of them. One had been mutated to be utterly enormous, over 9 feet tall, with cherry red skin and large tusks. He had taken the nickname Ogre, but was known to be a sweetheart despite his fearsome appearance. Another had thorns and leafy branches growing from her skin. She was perilously poisonous, and Monica had once seen her regenerate from being blown to pieces by an anti-tank rocket. She wore pads on every exposed inch of skin to avoid accidentally envenoming anyone. A third had glowing blue veins under his skin, and was doing tricks for the others' amusement, making silverware dance in the air with electromagnetism. He was capable of producing terrifying amounts of electricity, and had once supplied power to the entire district when a generator bank had gone down. And one table, all the way at the end, was occupied by a loner, Norman. Norman's mutations were among the most dramatic that Monica had ever seen. He was a confusing, borderline terrifying mess, a disgusting amalgamation of flesh and exposed organs, which levitated in the air, orbited by dozens of lazily floating disembodied hands, each with an eye in the palm. Parts of him constantly warped in and out of visible space, appearing and reappearing. Multiple copies of himself as he had looked before his mutation also made occasional appearance, popping into space, and then fading away. Echoes of his former self, which he used to sit at the table and take bites of his meal while his huge main body hovered, ominous and frightening, over the table. Just looking at Norman for too long gave most people a headache. Their minds recoiled at his very existence. People left him alone, unsure of how to approach him, much less engage him in conversation. Some had tried, but found it hard to eat with an undifferentiated, pulsating mass of human flesh literally looming over their heads. He only ate in the cafeteria a few times a month, teleporting into the room suddenly, and then warping away when his meal was finished. Monica had no idea where he went, or where he stayed when he wasn't around. He had only been coming to the Oasis for a few months. He and Monica had been imprisoned at the same site, and she remembered him as being a quiet, contemplative kind of guy before his transformation. And she supposed that still held true, but she really wasn't sure. She felt horribly for him, and made it a point as mayor to eat with him whenever he was around. She approached the table, into the outer orbit of floating hands, some of which turned to look at her with their many-colored eyes. None touched her as she came closer, they simply disappeared before coming in contact. She placed her tray directly in front of one of his fuzzy, out-of-focus clones, and sat, looked at its eyes. "How are you today, Norm?" There was a brief silence. The clone's vacant eyes looked at hers without looking into them, and Monica felt a strange pulse move through her body. "I'm alright. The wind is rich and full of secrets today. I saw you fight the Void Thrower." Norman's voice, if it could be called that, was difficult on the ears. He spoke with many voices at once, and sometimes conveyed meaning by directly injecting images or sensations into others' minds when words weren't enough. It was a profoundly surreal and sometimes upsetting experience, but Monica had gotten used to it. She did her best to keep her composure, and nodded, keeping her eyes on her tray to avoid looking at the dead-eyed clone in front of her. Its mouth didn't move when Norman spoke. "Yeah, I'm not sure if he'll come back this time. I went the extra mile. You didn't kill him. I was nearby. I tried to hold him down when you fired your laser, but he escaped. He's very strong." This was unprecedented. Norman didn't make a habit of involving himself directly with life in Old Vegas, much less participate in the fighting. "Do you know anything about him? Who he is? Where he came from? And more importantly, why he keeps trying to murder everyone?" The clone disappeared abruptly, then reappeared on her right with its tray in tow. It continued eating. A second one also materialized at the far end of the table, apparently not doing anything. "He has a strange mind. Few cohesive thoughts. A great amount of darkness, hard to find information through the shadows, and hatred. He appears to only want murder and destruction. I'm not sure he is alone within himself." Monica raised an eyebrow, and said around a mouthful of egg, "Not alone. What do you mean?" "I mean that he might not be the only inhabitant of his body. I think his mutation opened some kind of gate, and something came through. Something mean, but I don't know for sure. It's just a theory. I would have to get closer to dig deeper into him, and that would probably be bad for my health." "Do you think he can be killed?" "I think I'd like to kill him. Considering he keeps trying to kill us, I think you would need something to gum up the space around him, to stop him from warping away. I can do that, but not powerfully enough to hold him. I would need help from someone else, and I don't know anyone with the same kind of magic." Monica nodded, frowning in thought. "HMPH, neither do I. You know, the more I hang with you the more I like you. Norman, you're a nice guy, even if you are kind of terrifying." There was the sound of laughter, made echoing and awful by Norman's many voices, but he made up for it with an image of sunshine, and happy, colorful flowers, and a feeling of pleasant warmth, which he shoved directly into her mind without her permission. I'm an ugly bastard, but I prefer to think I make up for it with my glowing and handsome personality. A thought occurred to her as she ate. You can just totally look all through my brain, can't you, Norman? It wasn't a question. Yes, it's not something I do on purpose. Imagine walking through a museum and being told that if you think about looking at the beautiful paintings, you'll be punished. That doesn't really help with the creepiness. Heavy gray clouds gathered in her mind, and a sad, soft rain began to fall. There was the sound of distant crying, and the fluttering of wings. I'm sorry, Monica. I can't help what I am. If it makes you feel better, your secrets are safe with me. If I had lips, they'd be sealed. She shook her head. No, Norm. It's fine. You're fine. You just take a little getting used to, is all. You probably understand that way better than we do. The rain didn't stop. It's hard. I was given great gifts, but a lot of things were taken from me, too. I would never go back to what I was, but sometimes I think I would give almost anything to. The words didn't come, but Monica knew what he meant. She had no choice but to know. You should come around more often, Norm. You don't have to stay away and be a stranger. You've got it worse than the rest of us, but we're all changed too. And we can empathize at least a little bit. You're valuable, not just as a tactical asset, but as a person. You don't have to be alone. You have a family right here. You just have to give us a chance. A spear of sunlight stabbed through the clouds in Monica's mind. There was the smell of fresh wind, and the sound of proudly rustling trees. That makes me feel better. You are WHO. You are for a reason, Monica. And so am I, but it's good to know that of all people, you were given what you were given. Norman froze. Every part of him stopped abruptly. No pulsing, no drifting, no phasing. Perfect stillness. He was silent. Monica opened her mouth to ask him what was wrong, but he interrupted her. Lightning crashed in her head. Images of terror, agony, and chaos flickered across her vision uncontrollably. His voice was as loud as thunder, exploding through the minds of everyone in the oasis simultaneously. The cool blue glow that Norman gave became tortured and red. Soldiers, hundreds, entering the wreck district from the western gate. Guns, armor, war machines. It is the Foundation. They've come for us. Their commander intends to capture the citizens of Old Vegas and kill all. WHO resist. We must defend. We must defend our home. Now. The cafeteria immediately began to swarm with activity. Voices cried out. There was confusion and growing panic. Norman spoke directly to her. I will provide a telepathic communications network. Instruct your defenders to think through me. I will access and reveal the mind of the enemy. But first I will banish their helicopters from my sky. Be strong, my queen. Lead us to victory? Norman disappeared. Monica slammed her fists on the table and stood. The room immediately fell silent to hear her words. All fighters report to battle stations. Team captains, use Norman to coordinate with your troops and muster all defenders at the western gate. Maintenance squadron, dig in 200 yards back from 55th Street and break the road. Stop those fucking tanks. Spookies, get out there and get eyes on the intruders. I want status reports every 10 fucking minutes. Combat squadron, get the fuck topside and into phalanx formation. No more drills, people. Let's show these limp dick Nazi shitfucks why you can't fuck with Old Vegas. The room exploded in a roar of defiance, loud enough to rattle the concrete and quake the hearts of the Foundation. Monica stood at the end of 55th Street and watched as the Foundation troops flowed in, taking attack formations. They held their fire. Behind her she had summoned a thick hedgerow of artillery cannons, squared upon the soldiers in black. They outnumbered the Old Vegas defenders 3-1. They stood in lines, in thick armor and gas masks. Their tanks, heavy and armored, idled at the end of the block, unable to traverse wide cracks in the pavement put there by Dozer and his engineers. Their commander, a tall man with no mask, spoke aloud. Attention, mutants and mutant sympathizers. It is with a heavy heart that we come to you today. The Foundation cannot allow the inhuman infestation to continue to spread. For the benefit of all humanity, we ask that all mutants lay down their arms and surrender, to be contained for their own safety and the safety of the world. I imagine I do not need to explain what will happen if you choose to resist. Please, for the good of us all, do the right thing and let this go. The Queen of Spades, mayor of Old Vegas, stood at the fore, her people behind her. Dozer, his body coated in a layer of shifting, flowing stone, cracked his huge fists together loudly. His engineers shouted, rattling the earth underneath their feet. Ogre roared and swung his enormous steel club into the ground, splintering the pavement. The mutant defenders behind his red ball cried out with him. Norman hovered eldritch and horrible above them all, gazing downward with his hundreds of eyes, feeding the queen the commander's innermost plans as he thought them, and providing the defenders the profound unity of being able to think with one mind. And Jake was just behind her, quiet and calculating, his assault rifle trained directly upon the Foundation commander's head. Monica cried out, letting Norman broadcast her words directly into the minds of the Foundation soldiers. "We will never submit to your tyranny. We are different, but we are still people, and we will die for the right to remain free. Come and bring your hate, bring me your conquest, push upon us, enemies of liberty, and know our defiance. We will turn you back. We are the free state of Vegas, and we will not be moved." The free men and women thundered their pride, their yearning to live, their right to thrive, and stood upon their ground. And Monica let herself be wielded by the heart of her people, her soul forged into the shape of the tool they needed to defend their homes and lives from those that would take them, the shape of a gun. A farewell to arms? Canon Hub Apotheosis Hub. A farewell to arms? Rating plus 228 plus X. The O5 Council sat in silence at what they had just heard. Finally, Four's gentle voice broke the reverie. "What did you say?" I said, "It's hopeless." Four watched the weathered old man slump in his chair. "You're the last person I'd expect to hear that from. 10. Look at the data. The orange zone has shrunk by 2%. We've lost 2 sites worth of personnel and skips in the last month alone." Before he could continue, a blip on 11's screen borrowed her attention. She rubbed her wrinkled temple. 2 more task forces are lost, ETA 5, and Phi 2. 1 rose slightly. Dead. ETA 5 suffered catastrophic losses against the 3,396 empowered living mountain range. No further details. And Phi 2. A pause too long. 1 member dead, the rest affected. Shit. 2 spoke up. Finally. "We need to beef up Alabaster? Every drop of resources goes to containment, or neutralization if possible." 3 joined in. "I don't like this. This isn't us anymore. Putting most of mankind in camps and labs is overstepping our place." 2 cocked his head. "You picked a really bad time to suddenly grow a heart." 3. "It's just containment of anomalies. That's what we do. That's what we've been doing. Nothing has changed except the scale and the budget. There won't be a mankind unless we do our jobs. And do them now." 4 shifted. "A formal vote then, for or against increasing the scope of Project Alabaster and making containment and neutralization of the 3,396 spread the primary Foundation mission directive." Silence. A handful of voices quietly said in favor, one after the other. 3, 4, and 8 voted to oppose. The remainder stood silently as history marched forward. O5-2 disconnected from the holographic call and returned to his favorite chair. Not that his current residence had much of a view. 13 bunkers were located around and side, or near the planet, each one containing someone who at one point would have been rightly called a king or queen of the world. One of these bunkers contained O5-2, designed by the Foundation's best and brightest, bristling with the most advanced technology on the planet. The fortress was located a kilometer beneath the desert sands of somewhere redacted, a titanic block of concrete and various named and unnamed metals, all protecting a singular room, a heart, where O5-2 resided. The fortress defied any earthquake, hurricane, or asteroid that dared try to reach him, but right now it had a huge hole in it. Alarms blared all over the labyrinthine circulatory system of corridors. Classified machines bent the very fabric of space within the fortress to confuse and disorient any would-be intruders, as well as protect from outside disasters. One could walk for 100 kilometers and never get any closer to the heart if they didn't know the way. The flashing cognitohazardous emergency lights looked down upon miles of destroyed corridors. Massive guns lay destroyed, smoke still flowing from their shattered and melted barrels. Several humanoid bodies lay here, torn apart. One indistinct, melted red corpse had its fist embedded in the broken remains of a Scranton reality disruptor. The air around it sputtered and rippled with the machine's dying breaths as the corpse's skeleton twitched. What was once a laser grid defense whirred quietly, sparks dripping from it like tears. A motionless body made of sparkling crystal lay in pieces before it, and the deadly beams had left their mark both on it and the surrounding walls and guns. Deeper still, walls were torn apart and corroded. One wall had been chewed to pieces by a swarm of fiery moths. Another had been turned to rock candy and shattered. The further into the complex, the more esoteric the defenses, and the more strangely they had been overcome. A turret was being chewed up by a Tyrannosaurus Rex made of plasma. A body most certainly did not lie crumpled in a 10-meter circle where reality was crushed flat to 2 dimensions, and then rolled up into non-existence. A missile the size of a person sat in the air, encased in bone. A defense drone melted in a puddle of cheese. The Scranton reality anchors had sat quietly and impotently along the walls the entire time, for an anchor can hold a boat in place but it can't stop it from sinking. Alarms kept blaring. Agent Palinez ran one last diagnostic check on his Seguro suit and activated all systems. They would be here any second. 05-2 was inside a Seguro suit of his own. If it was to be the last wall protecting him, there were far worse options than a metal, polymer, and redacted stuffed shell, powered by a black box skip, an AIAD to move it faster than he could think, and a lot of hope. Only problem was that his suit was still powering up. Agent Palinez had always been a man of few words. Secure. Agent Figueroa continued. Contain. 05-2 felt a chill down his spine. Protect. Ka boom. Get behind us, sir. Palinez moved quickly and generated a force field seconds before a gigantic column of burning acetylene erupted from one of the attacker's hands. One instance with two arms holding two more disembodied arms made of brass led the charge of about 25 mutants. The two bodyguards braced. Their suits were experimental and only superficially tested. Still, they had a job to do. Agent Figueroa stepped forward and went on the offensive. She let loose a pulse of energy that threw the first wave back and gave her a second to breathe before shooting a gray-skinned two-headed man in the chest with her laser. One mutant extended its veins and arteries, which now ended in sharp points, and began to pry at the armor plating while another attempted to distract Figueroa with blasts of magma. A burst of electricity from the suit shot into the veins, but the mutant held its ground, screaming. Another mutant, with only mouths on its face and neck, opened all of them to scream at Figueroa. She dodged more magma and swung the vein guy into the path of the devastating sonic waves, disintegrating him. The scales of armor he had managed to scrape loose fell off as well. Just gotta hold on. Palinez wasn't holding on as well. After narrowly escaping another plasma Dakotaraptor and dispatching it with a magnetic field generator, one older man had affixed both of Palinez's feet to the floor with an ultra-strong pink adhesive gunk, and was currently attempting to dissolve the armor with acid while two more mutants held Palinez. Palinez diverted power to his right leg and moved it, ripping up a piece of the floor along with it. Off guard, the chemical mutant was sliced in half by Palinez's energy blade, but his job was done. Rita grit her teeth. Now or never. Seconds ago she had just watched Ernesto die to give her the opening she needed. She stayed behind Dylan and his rapidly breaking stone wall, and extended a single hair from her arm. The hair grew in length, and stretched out past the rock wall, past Ernesto's remains, past David, desperately absorbing the armored man's blasts, and towards the millimeter-wide breach in the suit. It then entered the gap, and weaved its way past the layers and cracks, past the carbon-woven undersuit, right down to the agent's skin. Rita's single black hair touched a brown one on the agent's arm, and her eyes widened. In her mind, she spoke the word that she had felt when the blessed goo had raised her up. The word etched into the DNA of her every cell. Thrive. Palinez felt a pinprick on his arm, then a shudder that pulsed through his entire body. Every one of his hairs stood on end, and they wouldn't sit back down. The hairs grew longer and longer. Some doubled back into his skin, creating new follicles that instantly sprouted even more hair. The hair filled the suit, and the pressure began to crush him. His nose and ear hairs had nowhere else to go, and he could feel himself suffocating. A bad hair day indeed. Exhausted, Rita fell to the floor as Palinez asphyxiated. His heart finally stopped, and the suit systems executed one last command. The outer shell fragmented and the pieces shot out at twice the speed of sound. The rest of it exploded, turning a 6-meter radius, including Rita, David, and Dylan, to nothing but atoms and light. One down, two to go. Armando clenched his fists, all 12 of the ones he had active right now. The blessed blue-green gift had merged with his original anomaly, and pushed him far beyond what he ever thought he could be. After spending so many years in a containment cell, he was finally in control of his anomaly, and soon, he would control his own destiny as well when the foundation that imprisoned him was gone. The second guard was more vicious. She had just torn one of them in half, and then nullified a retaliatory swarm of electricity wasps. Rita's down. Ernesto's down. We're gonna have to tear the whole thing open to kill her. Armando tore off an arm made of solid heptanotrocubane. Using several more arms in a chain, he hooked the dangerously explosive arm around the agent's neck. Boom! The explosion threw the remaining mutants back, and filled the room with smoke. One mutant clapped his hands, and the smoke coalesced into black metal needles which converged upon the agent. She flung them away and into another mutant, then activated the artificial gravity generator, bringing everyone else to their knees. It took a pretty big chunk of power, but Figueroa deemed it worth the chance to pick them off. She moved towards one gold-skinned woman, who shielded herself, and the scaly man next to her under a glowing force field bubble resembling a tumbleweed. Figueroa knew it would take too much time to break the shield. She cranked up the gravity near those two for a split second, crushing them. Graviton generator shutting down. Shit. The outer shell wouldn't hold much longer. That last explosion had managed to crack it, and the magma earlier had disrupted the polymer gel. The lowest layer of Genesis weave was overworked trying to repair itself fast enough to cushion blows. With her partner down, and the O5 suit only at 61%, she'd have to improvise. 3 of them remained: Armando, Angela, and Eric. They could see the breaches in the remaining guard's armor. If they could take her out, they could crack open the O5 suit like an egg at their leisure. Easier said than done, of course, but desperation was one hell of a drug. Armando and Eric rushed the guard, who responded with a sonic pulse. Armando quickly ripped off an arm, and grew a wing, of an extinct anomalous bat, that negated the sound. Eric jumped high, and Armando grabbed his leg with 3 more arms, and swung him downwards at the guard, who extended her right arm into a shield. Eric increased his mass 100-fold at the moment of impact, smashing the shield, and throwing the guard to the floor. Not giving her a chance to respond, Armando pinned her to the ground with 17 heavy metallic arms, while Eric hammered away at the armor plating with ultra-dense fists. Shell integrity critical? The Genesis we've began to give? Power systems were shorting out left and right. Figueroa was sure she had cracked a rib or 2 now. She activated the magnetic repulsor field, and sent the arms holding her down flying away. She charged one last shot on her psychic amplifier and liquefied Eric's brain, before her left wrist erupted in a shower of sparks. Armando slammed a Brachiosaurus front leg into her face, which she managed to block, then fired 2 energy balls right into Angela's face and stomach without missing a beat. Armando grabbed her with several long octopus-like tentacles, but Figueroa let off a charged shockwave from her central power core that sent him flying. He hit the wall, but managed to tear off some of the armor with the tentacle suckers. Armando summoned more mass than he had ever used, and grew an arm with a nanometer-thick neutron star skin. He couldn't maintain it for long, but he was desperate now. The gravity overwhelmed Figueroa and pulled her towards Armando, and he slammed her in the midsection, sending cracks spiraling through the rest of the suit and breaking her faceplate. Figueroa didn't care that her face was exposed now. She had this in the bag. She reached to her side and threw her only null grenade, the gravity of the arm directing it. Armando ripped off the arm and threw it as hard as he could towards her. Figueroa flinched as the grenade erupted into absolute nothingness, leaving an empty void of reality right in front of her face, where the arm was. Then she diverted power to her palm cannons, held her wrists together as a ball of blue plasma glowed in her hands, and extended her arms to fire the beam at Armando. He frantically generated arms as fast as he could to block the brunt of the beam, but Figueroa kept walking towards him. Then she stopped. The beam flickered and then cut out. Figueroa gave one single cry of pain, followed by silence, as her right arm and face turned into translucent crystal. Armando turned his head and saw Angela, barely breathing, straining to keep her 3 good eyes open, and holding the 4th bloody, disembodied eye in her own hand. The gaze of all 4 eyes turned whatever she looked at into salt, as long as she kept them focused intently on the same thing. The suit shifted, repairing the transmutation almost as soon as it happened, but Figueroa was done for. Her heart crystallized, and the suit exploded, less forcefully this time. Angela dropped the eye, and collapsed, finally succumbing to the gaping hole in her body. O5-2 suit unfolded, as it was programmed to upon the destruction of the other 2. Better to fight at less than 100% than to be a sitting duck, they had reasoned. Armando spat blood, and put up a dozen more fists. Sudden death. Winner takes all. Armando stood over O5-2, who was gasping in the shattered remains of the suit. Where is your power now? O5-2 coughed up blood? Was it worth it? All the lives you threw away to get here. Armando narrowed his eyes. That's real rich coming from you. Every single one of us volunteered. We knew what we were doing, and we all decided the reward was worth it. And that reward would be a brand new world, where there's a place for us that's not a cell. He took a deep breath. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a place in our world for you. Armando had more hands than anyone, but it only took one for him to strangle the man. Another crack in the foundations of the old world, hewn by the dead citizens of the new.